16mm motion picture film produces arguably one of the most beautiful and iconic pictures out of any imaging medium, with finer grain and richer colors compared to Super 8, and stronger character and grit when compared to 35. 16mm is a wonderful, happy medium when it comes to motion picture image quality. Films like The Hurt Locker and Black Swan were shot on 16mm. Quentin Tarantino elected to use it for the Bounty Law sections of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and numerous films that premiered at Cannes were also shot on 16, like Sean Baker's Red Rocket and Sean Penn's Flag Day. 16 also seems to be becoming more and more popular for music videos, commercials, and short films. Needless to say, it is an incredibly versatile format and can be shot by amateurs and professionals alike. While shooting 16mm may seem more daunting and expensive than Super 8, there are ways to simplify the process and mitigate some of the costs associated with shooting the larger format. Today, I'm going to share how you can easily and somewhat affordably start shooting 16mm film in 2021. So obviously, you're going to need a camera that shoots 16mm film. The model that you'll probably hear most people talking about is the Bolex H16. This was originally the camera that I was set on getting, but I wanted the reflex version, which is where you compose through the lens itself, and unfortunately it seems like those models are now going for upwards of $2,000 US. Around the time I was looking for a 16mm camera, Kyle McDougall uploaded a great video where he shot some Kodak 250D through his Bolex in London, and I left a comment about how my bank account really didn't need to see this video and that I had wanted a Bolex for quite a while now. And some random dude ended up replying saying that there are much cheaper alternatives like the Krasnogorsk 3. So what the hell is a Krasnogorsk 3? The Krasnogorsk 3, or K3, is a Soviet-made spring-wound 16mm mirror reflex camera that was produced between 1971 and 1993. The two important phrases to note there are spring-wound and mirror reflex. Spring-wound means this is a mechanical camera, so no batteries are required to operate it. Simply wind the motor and it's ready to shoot. This decreases the chances of any electrical malfunctions down the road. Mirror reflex means this is a reflex camera and composing is done through the lens, resulting in more accurate compositions, easier focusing, and in my opinion, an overall better shooting experience. It's also much more convenient when using zoom lenses, which this camera comes standard with. I started looking at some test footage from the Krasnogorsk 3 with its Meteor 17 to 69 f1.9 kit lens, and quickly realized that it is perfectly capable of producing beautiful images. I mean, there's a picture of Spike Lee using this thing. If it's good enough for Spike, I'm pretty sure it's good enough for me. While browsing for K3s for sale, I came across an Instagram page called K3 Super 16 ran by a guy named Max. I shot Max a DM and told him I was looking for a Super 16 modified K3. We ended up hopping on a video call with the translator and discussing the ins and outs about the Krasnogorsk system, and I quickly learned how knowledgeable and professional Max is when it comes to the K3. He was even nice enough to send me a K3 that he modified to Ultra 16 to make this video. I'll touch on the difference between regular 16, Super 16, and Ultra 16 in a bit, but let me just say that if you're looking to get a K3, get one from Max. He didn't tell me to tell you guys this. He said just make sure that they buy from a reputable dealer, but I'm telling you, if you're gonna buy a K3, get one from Max. Get the peace of mind that it's gonna work right, and he has the warranty to back it up. He basically does a full CLA on all of his cameras before he ships them out. He can modify them to Super 16 or Ultra 16. He can put a Canon EF or PL lens mount on there too, which is pretty rad. Just head over to his Instagram, shoot him a DM, let him know what you're looking for. He's very responsive and helpful, and he's also starting to do giveaways over there every month. So if you want a chance of winning a K3, definitely go check that out. Give him a follow. The link will be in the description. I also want to give a shout out to Theo, the translator, who helped make this entire process possible. He's a DP in LA and makes some incredible work. Definitely go check him out as well. His Instagram is linked below. Now, I briefly want to touch on the difference between the three aspect ratios of 16mm, regular 16, Super 16, and Ultra 16. Standard 16mm, which the K3 shoots stock, has an aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1. Super 16 extends the frame out to achieve a wider aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1, and Ultra 16 extends both sides of the frame out to achieve an even wider aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. While the Ultra 16 modification is usually easier than the Super 16 modification and can yield great results, I still think I prefer the look and the aspect ratio of Super 16. However, Ultra 16 does essentially allow you to choose between all three aspect ratios because you can always crop in to achieve your desired look. If you would like to watch a video that explains more about the modification process, please check the one that I've linked in the description. All right, what's up guys? Jumping in real quick. I'm in the process of editing this video and I just got a DM from Max and he just wanted me to let you guys know that on the Ultra 16 modification, on my footage, you might notice there is a little black bar on the far left side of the frame. With the new iteration of the modification that he does on the K3, that black bar no longer exists. So you do have access to that full width of the Ultra 16 frame, so you'll get that full 1.85 to 1. You'll notice on mine it gets cut off just a little bit because of that black bar on the left side of the frame, and then there's a little mirror reflection kind of the bottom left hand corner. He's taking care of both those issues, so just want you guys to know that if you buy an Ultra 16 version of the camera, you'll get access to that full 1.85 to 1, the full width of the Ultra 16 frame. One thing to note about modifying your K3 to either Super 16 or Ultra 16 is that technically the lens, the Meteor 17-69 f1.9 lens that comes standard with the K3 is not meant to cover the full Super 16 or Ultra 16 frame. So you might hear a lot of people say that if you shoot at a focal length wider than 25mm, you'll get some pretty gnarly vignetting on the corners of your frame. Now, I tested this myself on my recent hiking video where I hiked through the enchantments and I shot 2 rolls of 16mm film on my Ultra 16 K3. I actually shot about 80% of that video at the widest focal length on the lens, 17mm, which I theoretically should have gotten a lot of vignetting on. But for whatever reason, I had absolutely no vignetting. It came out looking totally fine. So a lot of people say that if you want to shoot anything wider than 25mm and you have a Super 16 or Ultra 16 modification, you're going to need to pick up a lens like the Zenitar 16mm that is made to cover that bigger sized frame. But for whatever reason, be it an anomaly or maybe Max did some sort of modification to fix this issue, I didn't have any problems with this whatsoever. So my lens, I can shoot it as wide as I want, 17mm on the Ultra 16 width, and no vignetting. It covers the full size of that frame. After receiving your K3, the next thing you'll need is obviously some film. The K3 takes 100-foot daylight spools. I use B&H Photo to purchase the 16mm Kodak motion picture film stock. Kodak has quite a few options when it comes to 16mm film. They offer color negative film, reversal, and black and white. Now you have to be a bit more calculated when picking motion picture film stock as opposed to still picture film stock. And that is because when you're shooting motion picture film, you're locked in to a specific shutter speed when you're out shooting. So when you're shooting at the standard 24 frames per second on the K3, the shutter speed will be 1/60th of a second. You can refer to the K3 manual available at k3camera.com to find the correct shutter speed at any given frame rate. If you plan on shooting in bright daylight, I would advise purchasing Kodak 50D. Buying 250D or 500T will be too fast for bright daylight, and you won't be able to stop down the K3's lens enough to compensate for the slow shutter speed that the camera has to shoot at. Now I know what you're thinking, why not just use an ND if you want to shoot these faster speed films in brighter sunlight? And yes, you can absolutely do that. However, let me warn you that whenever you throw an ND on a camera like the K3, I'm not sure about the Bolex, but at least the K3, the viewfinder isn't super bright. So I grabbed a 6-stop ND for mine, and when I put it on there, it was virtually useless because the viewfinder got so dark I really couldn't see what I was composing, and this was even in bright sunlight. After my experience with the 6-stop ND, I went ahead and picked up a 3-stop ND, and I can say that the 3-stop was much more usable in bright sunlight. However, I definitely would not recommend going any harsher than a 3-stop ND on this camera. Especially if you're shooting in anything other than bright sunlight, I would just recommend being more calculated when picking the film stock that you want to shoot. My recommendation would be, if you're shooting in bright sunlight or during the daytime, grab Kodak 50D. If you're shooting in overcast or semi-dimmer lighting, go ahead and pick up Kodak 250D. And for nighttime and interior shots, your best bet's probably going to be 500T. Now, if you're wondering what the letters D and T stand for after the film speed number, that simply refers to what color temperature that film stock is balanced for. So D stands for daylight, meaning if you shoot a daylight balanced film in a cooler color temperature or daylight, you will receive a neutral looking image. And on the other end of the spectrum, T stands for tungsten, meaning if you shoot a tungsten balanced film in tungsten light or warmer light, you will receive a neutral looking image. If you shoot a tungsten balanced film in broad daylight or cooler color temperatures, for example, you will receive a cooler looking image with more blue tones. However, this can be easily fixed in post. Alright, so once you have your K3 and film stock, you're ready to go ahead and load it. Now, unfortunately, loading a 16mm camera isn't as simple as loading a Super 8 camera. You can't just pop the cartridge in and you're ready to go. It's a little bit more complicated, but luckily you can still do it in daylight. You don't need to be in a dark space or anything like that, and it is relatively simple. So there are a couple items that I'd recommend having during the loading process, and those items are gaffer's tape and an air blower or some compressed air. So go ahead and first give the film winder a few cranks and set your frame rate to 8. You'll see why later. Next, you can remove the cover and use the air blower to clean out the internal compartments. Make sure to also remove the lens and blow air into this compartment as well. This just removes any dust or hairs that might have gotten into the gate, which will affect your negative. So go ahead and remove the take-up spool, pull back the footage counter, and insert the new spool so that the film feeds through clockwise. You're going to want to pull out a good amount of film because you're going to want plenty of slack to work with. Open the rollers by pulling up and swiveling them out, and place the film into the slot in the rollers. Press down on the film to ensure that it is fully set in place and close the first set of rollers, and be sure to pull the pressure plate out now if you haven't already. If you buy your K3 from Max, your camera will look like mine does on the inside, with the loop formers removed and replaced with black tape. But if your K3 does have loop formers, things may look a little different during these steps. Removing the loop formers is one of the key modifications that Max does to all of his cameras. It just helps the K3 run smoother and decreases the chance that there will be any jams or internal problems when running the film. Form a loop where the black tape is on top and feed the film over the gate, making sure that the perforation on the film is engaged with the pull down claw. At this point, you can reinsert the pressure plate, form another slightly larger loop over the other piece of black tape on the bottom of the camera, and place the strip into the second set of rollers. Make sure the film is fully engaged in the rollers by pressing down and feeling the film snap into place. You can now close the guide piece and the second set of rollers. Take the end of the film strip and feed it into the slot in the take-up spool, and wind the excess film tightly around the spool until there is tension against the engaged film. Set the take-up spool in place and begin firing the motor in short bursts. You want to make sure that the claw is still engaged with the perforation and that the loops are staying the same size while the film runs. Once everything looks good, place the cover back on, and with these older cameras, it's always a good idea to tape around the edges to prevent any light leaks. I'd also recommend taping over the footage counter, as light can leak through there as well. Just peel it back whenever you need to check the amount of film that you have left. Also, make sure to switch the frame rate back to your desired speed. I like to put a piece of tape over the dial to prevent myself from accidentally bumping it while I'm shooting. As far as rating the film goes, motion picture film stocks have an absolutely absurd amount of latitude. I recently watched a video by a cinematographer named Louis Potts, who regularly shoots 16mm for his projects, and he noted that overexposing 16mm color negative stocks by 1 to 2 stops usually results in more color richness and room to play in post. I overexposed my test rolls by 1 to 2 stops and was very pleased with the results. Once you shoot your entire roll, you can unload the film in daylight as well. I like to keep the original box that the film came in and put the take-up spool in it, then ship it off to the lab for developing. Once you've shot your roll of 16mm film, you're going to need to get it developed and scanned. Now this is where things tend to get very expensive very quickly, but there are a couple small businesses out there making it possible to get some very high quality developing and scanning services for a reasonably affordable price. The developing lab that I've been using is Video and Film Solutions out of Rockville, Maryland. They'll scan a roll of 16mm film for $12. It's probably a good idea to get a leader and cleaning as well, which is $6, so that will bring the total to $18. But still, $18 to develop a roll of 16mm film, that's pretty damn good. And for scanning, I prefer to go to Nicholas Coyle. He offers 6K scans for $30 per roll, and believe me when I say these scans are fantastic. He offers plenty of different options like color correction, setup, cropping, different resolutions, and can deliver in a variety of codecs. For my scans, I prefer the flat/log color option. This is best if you plan on color correcting the footage yourself, and let me tell you, color grading 16mm film is one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had as a photographer and filmmaker. I didn't do any HDR scans on my rolls, and according to Nick, it's usually not necessary to do so unless you're dealing with expired film or reversal film. I get the 4K/6.5K resolution option and an edge-to-edge scan. For file format, I prefer the ProRes Quad 4 with 12-bit color because it offers the best balance between color information and compatibility. Now I will warn you, since you're dealing with a 6.5K scan and a ProRes Quad 4 with 12-bit color, the file sizes can get up there pretty quickly. For one roll of 16mm film, the scans that I usually get back from Nick are about 70 gigabytes, and that gets you about 3 minutes of footage. So space can become an issue pretty quickly when dealing with these high-res scans. However, I'm sure you can work with Nick to get those file sizes down if you need them to be. The other awesome service Nick offers is complimentary online file delivery, which is awesome. That way you don't have to wait for a thumb drive or a hard drive to get mailed back to you. They're just ready to go as soon as you pay your invoice. And he will, of course, mail you your physical film reel back as well. Also, Video and Film Solutions frequently work with Nick, so you can just tell them to mail your film directly to him by leaving a note on your order form or putting Nick's address as the return address. So breaking down the cost of shooting one roll, you're looking at $61 for one roll of 16mm Kodak color negative film after tax ordered from B&H. About $8 to ship the film to Video and Film Solutions, $18 for developing, including the leader and cleaning, $8 for them to ship the film to Nick, $30 for a 6.5K log ProRes Quad 4 12-bit scan, and $8 for Nick to ship the physical film back to you, bringing the grand total to roughly $133. Now, yes, this is still a lot of money to pay for 3 minutes of video footage, but compared to a lot of competitors like Pro 8mm, it's actually relatively affordable. The cheapest way to get a 6.5K scan from Pro 8mm is to do their prepaid package, which is $200, and you have to buy it all up front. You have to buy the developing, you have to buy the scanning, and the film itself, which is repackaged Kodak film. So it's a big upfront cost, and by doing it through Video and Film Solutions and Nicholas Coyle, you only pay after the service is done, so you can buy each thing separately. It's a little bit easier on the bank account, and I love supporting small businesses whenever possible. So after it's all said and done, shooting a roll of 16mm ends up being only about $20 more than shooting a roll of 8mm. And while Super 8 undoubtedly has a magical feel of its own, 16mm just offers that extra level of beauty. The additional detail, richer colors, ability to shoot in slow motion, and more flexibility in post makes the extra $20 more than worth it. I truly cannot explain how incredible the entire experience is, and I'm not kidding when I say that receiving my 16mm scans for the first time quite literally made me never want to shoot another digital video again. All right, everyone, that's been my in-depth video on how to start shooting 16mm film in 2021. If you have any questions or if I left anything out, definitely leave a comment below or shoot me a DM on Instagram. And if you're looking to buy a K3 from Max, definitely head over to his Instagram, shoot him a DM. He'll get you set up. That's K3 Super 16. Link is in the description. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.